Hi, it's Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching. And I would say for the past 34 years, roughly, I've been teaching leaders how to coach. And I saw the opportunity for coaching way back when. And it's through the iterations and the evolution of the coaching industry, we now have the ICF and ATD, two great organizations that talk a lot about coaching. And you know what's really funny, especially with artificial intelligence, we have all these different views of what is coaching? How does it work? What's the goal of coaching? And you get the integrations, or I would even say the misunderstandings of time when someone gives a lot of feedback and they say, "Oh, I was just coaching him." No, you're actually giving that person feedback. So I want to give you some fundamentals. Feedback is about giving insight where someone has strengths and where they have opportunities to improve. Mentoring is about advising and saying, "Here's what I've done, here's what works in this typical situation." We're providing some guidance. Coaching is helping somebody self-discover. You know, it's been estimated that 85% of people significantly lack self-awareness. So when I think about some of the things that we need to do and what is coaching, I'm amazed at how many different interpretations and models they are. And so I want to share with you something called the pyramid of coaching. This is a foundational concept that we've built that'll get at the heart of what we need to do. Number two, or when I look at the coaching and I look at the mindset of each person, it starts there. The mindset is so critical. And when we teach, and we have a module called the mindset of coaching, and the mindset of coaching is really predicated around or upon our own mindset. And I believe we all should have a mantra of how we want to live. Now, I had a boss, a manager, a coach, phenomenal over 42 years ago at IBM, had me do this. And she said, "What do you want to be known as? How do you want people to know you?" And I said this 42 years ago. I want to be relentlessly positive and I want to always be accessible. Till this day, I live by that. And I think my clients would back me up on that. I think they would. The mindset is about positivity, showing up positive, becoming a magnet people want to work for. See, what happens to leaders is they have these numbers and these metrics and these KPIs and these OKRs, and I got to hit my milestones. And we start to focus on the job and the job output. Nothing wrong with that. We have to remember there are people doing that job. And so the mindset is critical. And so again, what's your mantra? If you don't have one, you're going to be very reactive to the job requirements, as we probably should, but that's not coaching. That's management. The second level, spot coaching. I have so many clients who say, "Oh, we use observational coaching." Let me tell you what I think observational coaching typically turns into: constructive feedback. Numbers bear it out. The Gallup organization reports it. Do you know they also report that people engage 8 times more when we lead with the good stuff? Think about that. 8 times more when we lead with the good stuff, people will engage with us. Think about that. So we encourage in our spot coaching course for people to literally track a 3-to-1 ratio of going to look for the good stuff, acknowledging, calling people in for the good stuff. And what that ultimately does is it builds trust and acceptance of the constructive stuff. It's that simple. Nobody goes home and says, "Honey, I had a great day. My boss was continuous with constructive feedback all day long. I can't wait to go back tomorrow." Doesn't work that way. Now, what we have typically taught is continuous coaching, progress coaching. That's our Qualms framework. Typically, we encourage leaders to focus on one area for their group and or their individual employees where traction needs to be made. Typically, the one-on-one weekly is about 8 to 9 minutes weekly for one-on-one, about 20 minutes bi-weekly for group coaching. That's it. And then the question becomes, are we progressing? Where do we need to progress? Their progress is your insight what to do as a leader. That's essentially what coaching is. Yet, if you don't have a mindset, we tend to just show up. If you are spot coaching, let's be candid. We are all typically guilty of this. And that is, we are typically triggered by the things we see that we want to correct and fix. We want to get it off our mental plate. What that does, unbeknownst to us, certainly not with our intentions, we erode motivation. So I want to give you a couple numbers. And I want to give you a couple numbers that I think you'll find very interesting. And I've shared these before. 85% of people lack self-awareness. 42% of people today are actively looking for jobs. 42 to 49%. The number's actually gone up. That's a study done by McKinsey, that people feel like they're going to look for other jobs because of a lack of coaching as it relates to their careers. And then when we think about 76% of people are at their most motivated study, with a study done at Harvard, when they're progressing, which came out about 4 or 5 years ago. We've been progress coaching for 34 years, so it was music to my ears. And that we have this 76% number, 8 out of 10 people. It's not reward, recognition, and money. And that's where we get in trouble. We throw money at people. Well, I'll give you a raise if you stay. What if they're not happy? They might be temporarily happy because the money looks good. That's not satisfaction. That's not job happiness. So again, what is coaching? Coaching is about an investment. It is about an investment in people to get them to see themselves and to take action on what they see. That's number one. Very few people do number one arbitrarily on their own. So I want to show very quickly our model. And I go back to this is that when we teach our 4-step model, which is for one-on-one or group coaching, the learning project. So Mike, come in next week with 2 examples of where you were positively engaged with your teammates. And let's say Mike, our hypothetical employee, needs to be more positive, a better teammate. I'm going to ask questions, which drives self-awareness. Remember the 85% number. What did you do? What are you going to do that will continue this process? What have you learned about yourself? Activities. Oh, you have a tough conversation coming up with Lisa. Let's prepare for it. Let's practice it. And then you end every conversation bestowing ownership and accountability for improvement, behavioral change, and the rightful owner, the person you're coaching. Now, if Mike says to me, geez, I want to be a leader someday, and that's his motivator, that creates emotional attachment to what most people avoid, personal change. So if I say, well, Mike, what if you continue to develop better relationships in the workplace? How do you think this might help you achieve your goal of becoming a first-time leader? In that moment, our hypothetical employee might goes, oh, wow, there's a huge benefit to me, whether conscious or subconscious. Now, the number one barrier we get all the time is what? We don't have time to coach. And I said, oh, if you don't have time to coach, and if you don't have that time, we teach something called supplemental coaching. You're supplementing, number one, the direct coaching. Could be reading a book, practicing with a peer, observe and journaling, self-coaching, mentoring. So we teach about 10 different ways to supplement that direct coaching. It's essentially that easy. So what we've actually done is we've actually created this, but the foundation of coaching is really, really simple. Number one, it's you have to have a mindset. You have to want to invest in people. If you don't want to invest in people, you will have fractional leadership success. Number two, we need to train our eyes to go look for the good stuff. I love to share this. When I was coaching volleyball, I remember I had a parent really mad. And I was coaching club for a great volleyball club, Milwaukee Volleyball Club. And I had a parent really upset. He said, how can you sit there and smile and joke with the kids? We're getting clobbered. And it was like one of the first years I was with this club, great club. And I remember looking at this parent and I go, what would you like me to do? He goes, why aren't you yelling at them? I go, what? They're not my kids. I don't have a kid in the program. I said, number two, that's where practice comes in. We will become a winning team. That year with 8 kids, we ended up winning the Wisconsin Region Championship. Because I'm a great coach? No, I trust the process of coaching. See, coaching is about getting the kids to feel good about getting better. It's about getting adults to feel good about getting better. And see, then when I start to spot all the good things that they're doing, their confidence and their acceptance of the areas of opportunity to improve dramatically increase. And then when we have this thing called continuous coaching in the volleyball world, it's called practice time. In the work world, it can be scheduled practice sessions or coaching sessions with your employees. Then we have to ask ourselves and measure, are we progressing? Do you feel like you're progressing? How do you feel? I feel 50% better. Pretty good testament. So what we have to do more than anything is understand that as we go forward as a community of coaches, is Coaching is about investing in other people. Number two, it's about using techniques and strategies and conversational pieces to get those people to look in the mirror and say, this is where I have an opportunity to improve. And then to actually schedule it. Now, I'm not against spot coaching or observational coaching. Yet by itself, we can tend to gravitate to constructive feedback. If we are strength-based, again, going back to the Gallup organization, people engage 8 times more when we lead with their strengths. It's huge. It makes all the difference in the world. That's what coaching is. Coaching isn't telling someone to improve. That's management. Mentoring is really about, here's what's worked. You want to get promoted. Here's the path you need to take. You're advising. Coaching is about helping someone self-discover and take action on those discoveries. That's essentially what the coaching field is. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, when you're coaching someone with a negative attitude, you're coaching someone who's late for work all the time and they started 4 months ago, but they're ready for a promotion. You've got somebody with body odor. You've got somebody who wants to get promoted and they're not ready and you don't want to burst their bubble because they're working really hard. And oh, by the way, it's the nephew of the CEO. All of those require what we call conversational navigation skills. So when we get into a situation, and I'm going to put myself on a pedestal here for a second, give me some latitude. The fact of the matter is I'll put myself up there because I will role play every situation that someone brings to my attention. Because what I'm doing is I'm grabbing frameworks. So when you look at our model here, this framework has a lot of nuances between it. So when I'm asking questions like, what are some areas you need to improve? And the employee says, well, I don't think I need to improve anything, is much different than someone saying, yeah, I got to slow down. I got to do a better job of listening to my teammates. Both of those conjure up very different conversational pieces. When you have somebody who's arrogant, mean, doesn't work well with others, and they want to get promoted, that's a different conversation than somebody who wants to get promoted, that you want to have stay in the organization. That's awesome from a teamwork standpoint. And you're trying to get them to stay in the organization and move up, and you don't have any opportunities for them. That requires a different conversation. See, we don't talk about conversational navigation. I want to give you a great example. We had one of our manufacturing clients. We had somebody, when we were doing a session and we were talking about the value of coaching, and I had a leader say, well, look, I have one of my supervisors right down on the shop floor, says she's got a person with body odor. How the heck do you have that conversation where they leave happy? And that's what you've been trying to preach here this morning. I said, whoa. I never said every coaching conversation is about people leaving happy. It's about getting them to self-discover. That conversation will never be easy. I said, are you ready to role play it? He goes, excuse me? I said, you get to play the smelly guy. And we all started laughing. I said, I want you to write down the words, walking the pier. So I start to role play this technique. And I said, if you were about to, in really cold weather, you're on the pier and you're walking near the lake, and you don't see how close you're getting to the lake, and you could fall in from the pier. You could go right in the water and freeze. And, would you want me to say something? And the guy who's role playing goes, well, yeah. And I said, we're kind of on a different pier, and I'd love your permission because this is really uncomfortable. Notice my tone difference. I said, I've noticed it. You may not notice it. I never bring up other people. Because when you bring up other people, 3 people told me that they're complaining about your body odor. Where did that guy go that I'm talking to? Who are the 3 people? Not that I smell. And I said, I've noticed it, and I owe it to you as you get near that water to make you aware that when you're working, and I think it's because you're working hard, my senses, you emit an odor. And I don't know if you're even aware of that. And the guy looks at me when we're role playing, so we finish it. And I actually had the conversation with the guy on the shop floor, and the guy goes, why didn't somebody say something? I go, it's uncomfortable. I said, this is a weird thing. Do you bring deodorant with you? I said, I bring it to my volleyball practice because I'm terrible. And I made a joke. He still wasn't comfortable. And he said, okay, I'll bring some deodorant with me, maybe some spray. I said, yeah, no, it's not a big deal. But I said, I didn't want this to linger on because I think that would be unfair if no one said something to you. So I took it upon myself. Have I handled this well? The guy goes, no. He goes, I'm embarrassed. 2 weeks later, he came up to me and goes, yeah, I people were actually commenting to me. And I said, oh, it's great. I said, you feel better? And he goes, yeah. In that moment, it was horribly uncomfortable for both parties, but I was comfortable having the conversation. The supervisor was terrified to have the conversation. And it could also be female to male and, things like that. I get that. So these all require conversational skills. And so what you need more than anything is that mindset. Go spot the good things, schedule time for the areas of continuous need for improvement. And that's the formula for what coaching is. If you have any questions, reach out.